infinite complacence, people went to and fro the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
Before we get to my chat with the officer, I'd like to share some information with you from this episode's sponsor. Visit Braxton County, West Virginia. In my humble opinion, this is a place that every FRAY should visit. I say this because I've been there myself during filming of On the Trail of UFOs. So let me recap all there is to see and do there. Besides the beautiful natural scenery, hiking trails, fishing, swimming, great restaurants, and quaint hotels. For those of us who like the weird, you have the Flatwoods Monster chairs scattered throughout the area, the Flatwoods Monster Museum itself, haunted Haymond House, and even ghost towns to explore. And last but not least, you can put your investigative boots on and get out there to search for UFOs in the plentiful dark skies and Bigfoot and other cryptids on the ground. Here's a hint. Head to Sutton Lake. You can find Braxton County on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Braxton WV. And with Visit Braxton County, West Virginia sponsoring this episode, I kindly ask you to head to braxtonwv.org/fray to get all the information you need on visiting this scenic and paranormally active area. Again, that's braxtonwv.org/fray. Your email came into me, goodness me, quite a while ago, I think, actually, and we're finally doing this, so thank you. And just to
thank you.
Yeah, and just to set this up, we are not going to be divulging your name, your location. We're going to say you are an officer of the law within the United States. That's pretty much all anybody's going to get out of this, right? So just to let everybody know, he will be sticking around after he talks about this upcoming story for a few more very interesting happenings within his own home over the years when he was younger, really up till recently. So that will be for the Patreon side. So, okay, I will kind of step back and we're going to get into this first story here. And however you want to set this up and wherever you want to start, you go right ahead.
Okay, thanks. So I was on patrol, just a regular patrolman, at night. I guess if I remember, so going back probably about 20 years, but I've never talked about it to anybody except you, which is pretty crazy in the email. Going through your podcast, you hear people coming out for the first time and just kind of felt like, okay, it was time and some other stuff that's going on with me. I just figured, okay, why not talk about it? And so here we are. But I was on patrol, and again, about 2-3 in the morning, so headlights are on, and I come up sort of, it's a hill, and then the road straightens out, and it's a back road, and I'm in a fairly populated area, and I just see, and it's street lined, it's well lit. The street is, you can park a car, and 2 cars can get by. So it's not like a tiny little road or anything, and there's houses and everything. But as I'm coming up to a T intersection, straight ahead, I just saw a thing. Now, again, it's dark. I believe my window was down, I believe, so it was somewhere between April, not super hot that I remember, so maybe April, May, June, something to that effect. And it just came from one side of the road and crossed the other side. And I distinctly remember it took 3 steps to cross that street. And it was huge. I would say 8 to 10 feet. And just, again, so it's black. The backdrop is black or dark. But this thing was black. It really just stood out. I could see the shape of it. It really stood out against the others. And again, street lights were on. And it looked like it came from one, like a driveway, or even the front yard that I could see. And I would say it was probably anywhere from 100 to 200 feet, maybe. It wasn't very far away. Crossed that street and just went to the other. And like I said, 3 steps. It was huge, like barrel chested. And I remember the legs being backwards. I always had a German Shepherd, a German Shepherd kind of legs, but I don't remember if it had hooves or feet or any of that kind of stuff. But it crossed that street, and all I could feel was, I don't remember if the hair stood up on my arms or anything, but it was pure evil. That's all I could think of. And I literally, once it was out of sight, and again, 3 steps across the street, and it maybe took a couple seconds that I saw this thing, and I made a right, and God is my witness to this day, I've never ever driven on that street again. And I got put out of patrol into another unit, and I've since been back to patrol. But I've never ever gone down that street, and I will never go back on that street. But it was, I kind of described it to you as like the chest on it was like the Beauty and the Beast, like just kind of a big sort of barrel chest, like the cartoon and stuff. It's always like a barrel chested kind of thing. It never looked at me. If it did, I didn't realize that it looked at me. I didn't see any eyes. I don't remember if it had a tail, but just pure darkness and pure evil. But the shape of it was distinct. And again, just to have 3 steps cross that street was amazing to me. It was just a massive kind of figure, and just kind of went out of the darkness. And I probably sat there for maybe a good 10 seconds, like, what the hell was that? And never investigated it. I knew it wasn't something that I wanted to see. It wasn't something that, obviously it wasn't, where this located. We don't get no bears whatsoever. And a bear wouldn't have the legs like that and just cross the street and boom. As far as I don't know if it disappeared. It just kind of went onto the other property, and I just sat there, probably my mouth open, and just made a right, and that was it. And I've never talked to anybody about it, but just a pretty crazy experience. And I've never had any experiences other than what we'll talk about later on, but nothing where I would see anything. And even in my entire life, I've never, quote unquote, seen anything. I've never seen any ghosts or any of that kind of stuff. But to see this thing was, I'm not I'm a police officer, but I'm not a tough guy or anything like that. But it really shook me up, and I have no idea to this day what it was. I listened to your podcast, and I hear Dogman or this, that. I don't know what Dogman would look like. I don't remember if this thing had like a snout, and I don't know if Dogman has like a quote unquote snout, if it's actually, but I just honestly have no idea what this thing was. But it was, I would almost say sort of, it felt satanic, just evil, and just really the black on it was so distinct that, the shape was just, you could make out, the shape of this thing, and it was pretty crazy. But and like I said, just I've never been back on the street, and I've never talked to anybody back, because as a police officer, well, what the hell do you think it was? Or, why didn't you go after it, or this or that? It was probably a bear. Most people aren't going to believe you. It's something that obviously 20 years has stuck in my head. I wish well, I don't know if I would have wanted it to look at me. I don't know if it would have come at me if it had. My headlights were on, so, and like I said, 100 to 200 feet is not that far. I don't know if it would have come after me. I don't know what I would have done if it had. I probably would have just tried to haul ass out of there. But I don't know why it didn't to me. I'm kind of grateful it didn't, I guess. But I don't really strange kind of thing. And there's no one has ever talked to me about seeing anything like that in the past. Before that, and even now being back in patrol and the other roles that I have, no one has ever talked to me about seeing anything or ghosts or any of that kind of stuff. So really just a pretty weird experience for me anyway. But it's something that I really wouldn't want to see again. But it's funny. The reason I kind of reached out, I guess, is to try to see, one, to get it off my chest after all these years, but two, just to see what it could have been. I have no idea what it actually could have been. So, but yeah, pretty crazy. So for it being that long and to see, what always stood out to me was that it covered that territory, that covered that street, that in just 3 steps was always pretty amazing. And one of the things that always stands out to me, that and the size. So like I said, just judging from that, I don't have anything to really base it on, as far as, looking at things in the background and trying to figure out how tall it actually was. It was such a quick thing where, one side of the road to the other. I don't know if I would have even been able to try to figure out, like you see some Bigfoot things where they, they'll go back and they'll look at where they have a still photo and they can go back and check the length of the tree and figure out how tall it is. But I would have never been able to do that with this thing. I don't remember. I don't think it had like flowing hair, but it seemed like it had some kind of hairish to it, but hard to tell. I'm sort of kind of grasping at that aspect of it, but like nothing flowing behind it. So, it's not like it had super long hair or anything like that, but yeah, just a really weird experience that I don't really want to go through again, and hope that no one else has. And, the guys and girls that are in that beat, so to speak, I've never heard anyone talk about seeing anything. So I don't know if it's just a one-time thing, but yeah, kind of strange. So
I don't know what you mean. That's not strange at all. I mean, come on.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's really freaky. So for a big place that we work, to only have that, see that, and again, to never see anything before in my life. I mean, I've had family members that have seen things, but I've had experiences. Don't get me wrong, and you and I will talk about that. But and to see that, I guess I'd rather see, like an apparition or something, like a Civil War ghost or something, as opposed to this thing, because it was just really, really dark, eerie, and like I said, just I got a pure sense of evil and just Satan bad, just it was not, whatever it was not good, and I don't like I said, I don't really want to experience that again. Pretty crazy. So.
Well, especially you weren't out in some super rural, middle of nowhere area. We're talking about a populated place. It walked off of a driveway and crossed just a regular old road and right across to another housing tract right there, right?
Correct. Yes, and we got we got no calls that night, so nothing was. I didn't get any dispatch calls. You know what I mean? To say, hey, this happened, or we have a break-in, or an alarm was set off, or anything. Like, no, like I said, very populated area, but never got anything. Which I guess I'm kind of glad, because I would have had to go back to that area, and I don't want to. But yeah, even to this day, I've worked that area a few times. Never gotten any calls in that area, thank God. So I don't have to go there. I don't go on that street, patrol around it. But I've never gone back on history. I don't want to, but, and I'll tell you that, like I said, would have happened again because no one else has, if they've seen anything, they've never said anything to me. And I mean, I don't know if, the other cops or policemen out there will know that, a police department's basically, when it comes to rumors and gossip, it's worse than high school. So I would have heard something if somebody had seen something. And I'm a pretty well respected, not to float my own boat, but I'm a pretty respected guy within our police department. So I've helped guys out with some other stuff as far as, PTSD or whatever. So a lot of guys do confide in me, and I've never heard anything. So pretty crazy that I was the one that saw it. I don't know why I was the one that saw it, but yeah, just pretty weird, pretty strange.
Now, what about the actual movement when it was walking, its gait? Can you go into any more detail about how the legs were moving, and did it actually move its arms and hands as it was taking these few steps?
Yeah, so again, the backward, like German Shepherd kind of legs, 3 steps is all. That's really the one thing, really, because it goes to the size of it to cover basically, 3 car length road in 3 steps. So it is really insane. But I vaguely remember like arms kind of swinging, but I don't know. Again, I couldn't tell you if it was wearing a shirt, if it had paws or hands. I didn't really. I kind of focused on like the chest of it. Like I was just kind of mesmerized by the absolute size of this thing, and then just no eyes, no teeth. I didn't see anything. It kind of. I don't remember again, even if it had snout or anything. It was just I don't remember even the feet. I don't remember if it was paws or hooves or anything to that effect. But I vaguely remember like kind of an arm swing, but not. I wouldn't be able to say that definitively that it had swung its arms and what they look like. I wouldn't be able to describe that, but it was really crazy. You think like, oh, I was going to look at these red eyes or something. I don't know, and I'm kind of glad it didn't. But yeah, just that barrel chest was, just really something that stood out, like just the size. So yeah, I don't remember that. Just huge. So just pretty crazy back then, but.
Yeah, so you always saw it in profile. So that's just how far the chest stuck out, right? And that's probably why that stands out so much in your mind, because it never ever turned towards you.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah. So, and if it turned sideways, man, I wish. Well, if it had squared off to me, it almost seemed like it would have been like almost take up the width of my car. Like that's just kind of what, I guess now that you say that, it's kind of what I envisioned that it would be like I said, just a huge, maybe not completely, you know what I mean? But it just, man, it would take up the majority of the front of my car width wise. And just the size of it, it had to be that wide, to be that big. And like I said, that the chest area on the profile it couldn't have been, it's not like it's going to turn and just be, pretty thin. So yeah, it had to be just, maybe, I don't know, maybe 4 feet wide, something like 5 feet wide, maybe, I don't know. So yes, I only did see the profile. So just seeing the distinct legs, which were, when you see like those German Shepherd legs, it really stuck out to me that this is pretty weird. Like, what the hell is this thing? But man, just a really bad feeling about it.
Something that you said really, and I already jotted this down to bring this up to you, but in fact, it was my very last episode, the werewolf of Codman Square, where this thing was about the same height, about the same, if you're guessing its width, about the same as that. She didn't see the bottom half of it, but this thing had a piece of clothing on. It had clothing on. And you kind of hinted that it could have had clothes on. And I find that just really interesting considering what I just talked about with Tina last week.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was emailing you, I had never, it never struck me that this thing could have been a werewolf. And when I was texting you or emailing you, I was like, this thing actually could be, maybe it was a werewolf. So that was the first time after all the years and years of thinking about things that it ever actually hit me that it could be a werewolf. Like we were explaining, I'm a little behind on your podcast, but so I haven't heard that one yet. But yeah, it's just really strange that I'm like, yeah, it kind of, with the legs, I guess, definitely made it seem like a werewolf. And it's ridiculous that you don't think about that like, yeah, maybe it was a werewolf, but
right.
I don't know how tall werewolves get, or even the quote unquote the Dogman stuff, or whatever. I don't. Yeah, it could have. It was really would have been hard to distinguish if it did have like clothes on. It was so dark, and the clothes, that if it would have had clothes on it would have been really hard to distinguish, like a shirt, where the shirt ended and the pants started, or like
right.
that kind of thing.
Right.
I wouldn't really be able to say, but kind of seemed like because I didn't notice any hair flowing, or fur, so to speak, or whatever, but yeah, just that'd be I'm be interesting to listen to that, to see if there's similarities that I would have to that.
Yeah, one of these days maybe you can hit that one up and just to let me know what you think. I would be very interested to hear what you think about that episode. Another detail, maybe possibly, that maybe you got a little hint of: any ears on that guy? Did you see that side of the face to get the ear?
No, it's funny. Yeah, no, I didn't see. I like think maybe like a pointy kind of ear. I don't remember any of that.
No, that's all right.
Like I said, so it probably, literally seconds, 3 seconds, maybe 2 seconds that it crossed that street. You're just fixated, like, what in the F is this thing? And I don't remember it. Yeah, I don't remember ears. Even that, like I said, the head part, like I just kind of glanced at the head. It possibly had like a little snap, but I really couldn't. I couldn't say whether it did. But I don't remember it having, like, it definitely didn't have a human head. So that's where I tend to say that it had like a smallish kind of snout, but not. I couldn't really tell.
But a big head, a bigger head than a human would have, though.
Yes, I would say that, definitely. Yeah.
Because really,
and then it was just pretty. I would say everything was kind of proportionate.
Mm-hmm.
As far as legs, chest, head. I just don't remember arms being like super long, because I would have seen them if the arms were really long. I would have seen them, like a regular, because it was bipedal.
Mm-hmm.
So you would have seen it not like so much like a Bigfoot kind of, arm kind of, to put a visual to it. But I would just say kind of normal arm length for it. But I just don't remember him like swinging really, really far in those 3 steps. So it kind of, one thing I always kind of thought to myself, and I think even that night, was, did somebody die? Like the house that it came from, was this like a spirit, so to speak, that like took somebody else's spirit? Although I didn't see another spirit around it, but like, what is this dark thing? What's it doing around here? It's one thing that I always thought, I'm like, what was it doing there? Did it? And again, if somebody dies, we get called, whether they're someone young or someone old. We'll always get a call, and we would have to go there and make sure that there's no problems with the body and stuff like that. And maybe the coroner will just release the body to the family if they're old and they have extensive medical history, or they would come out and take it for an autopsy. And we got no calls that night for any of that. So I just wondered, like, what is it doing here? And I don't know if like just kind of what's the purpose of it? There's no cemetery around there, so I don't know. There's railroad tracks there near it, but nothing where you would expect to see something like this, like if I was driving past a cemetery, you're like, hey, okay, like that's something bad in there, what I mean? But there's nothing around it to really sit there and say, okay, this would make sense that I would see something like this on this road. It just had no rhyme or reason why I would see something like that, so that always kind of stuck in my head, like what was the deal with this thing? So.
And probably the last question, and sorry, I'm getting really picky with the description of this thing, but I'm just trying to see it the way that you saw it, and I'm kind of wondering about the other reports I've heard of a wolf-like creature or a dogman-like creature. A lot of times they'll say massive upper body, and then it kind of tapers down, and then the legs are thinner, still very powerful looking, but much kind of thinner. But so you said it was quite proportionate. So does that mean the legs were also quite large as well?
I would say like I would describe them as strong, like not that I could see muscles bulging or anything, but again, 3 steps to cover. That's what I always go back to, right?
Yeah.
It's those 3 steps. So they were pretty big steps, because if they are sort of longish legs, because if not, it wouldn't have been able to cover that. I mean, if you picture 3 cars side by side, I mean, I don't know how many steps it would take us to cover them. And even coming from, I'm talking from like the property. So you have sidewalk to sidewalk with 3 cars in between, 3 steps. I don't know how many steps that would take for us. I never actually thought about that. But so yeah, I would say that they were proportionate, even though they were the backwards German Shepherd kind of legs. But they were somewhat, I guess, obviously thinner than that barrel chest.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I've always in my head thought Beauty and the Beast, like that Disney cartoon, how it's, just a big, kind of like a big barrel chested kind of thing. Although I don't think, I haven't seen that in forever. I don't know if that was, I don't think that had like the backward legs in the cartoon, but yeah. So I would say that they were somewhat proportionate, somewhat longer to cover that area. So yeah, I mean, we didn't have, it's 2021. We didn't have cameras in the car where I could have hit record where it would have gone backwards, because at the time we didn't have cameras in the car. That's something actually I just thought about, that if we had cameras, I could have recorded that. Of course, I would have had to make a request for the tape, but I could have just, watched it to see and slowed it down and just said, maybe gotten a better, who knows if it would have even showed up on it, it's like some things are
right.
Maybe it wouldn't have picked it up if I was too far away or something, for the camera.
Well, especially considering the feeling that you got about it, which I want to touch on here in a minute. But okay, so that's a really interesting point with the camera, and it was something that I had written down to ask if you had a dash cam, and you answered that already. But so say you did, and say, you're assuming, of course, it's recording all the time. It should be on there. If you don't bring it up to your superior officer, is there someone that goes over those tapes, or unless there's something that had gone down, they wouldn't go over those tapes? And would you actually just act like you hadn't seen it? I mean, because of, I'm really the first person you're even telling after all these years. So if that was on tape back then, would you have even brought it to anybody's attention that it could be on tape?
Well, first off, so I would have had to activate so I could have just hit record, and ours go back 30 seconds. They sort of record 24/7, but it'll only record, it'll go back 30 seconds from the time. But it's funny, if I did have it on tape, and I just wanted to say, hey, Sarge, I recorded something last night, and I wanted to get a copy of it. And again, I'm pretty close with the guys that handle that stuff, so I could have maybe done it on the download, so to speak, But if something showed up on it, it would have been a lot easier for me to say, hey, what do you think of this?
Right.
And don't tell anybody else, which, Lord knows where that goes. But yeah, if I had video of it, it would have been a lot easier. I don't know. It's hard to say since it didn't happen. But if I had a video of it, man, I don't know, because it really was such an ominous kind of feeling to get. I mean, it really sent chills up my spine. Like this is not good, and that's why I got out of Dodge, because I was like, man, I don't. And even not to go back on that street. I mean, I think about it, and I'm like, even I work days and nights. I work overnights as well, and even during the day, because I don't know what that thing was, or it was nighttime, obviously, which makes sense. That's when you usually see, like, bad things. But interesting. That's a good question, because I don't know if I would have said anything if the sergeants had said, hey, what was this thing? Again, it was pretty quick on a camera. I think they would have had to been looking for it.
Right.
If like they would have just said, would you hit your lights accidentally? Because when they're reviewing it, they're usually looking at traffic stops and that kind of stuff. So it would have been interesting. That's a good question. I'm not 100% sure, but at least I would have had some vindication if it showed up. If that thing if you could see it, would have given me some validation as to what I actually saw.
Absolutely.
But then I could have been showing, sending you a copy of it, and then everybody could have seen it and told me whether I was, crazy or not to think that, what that thing was. So yeah, that's a good question. I don't know.
Well, and can you imagine, really? I mean, there has to be tape of really all the things that, I talk about. You got Bigfoot and the Dogman and all these other things. It's a lot of times it's a road crossing, and there has been, of course, dash cam film from police officers' vehicles before. There's a really more famous one, but it's so hard to see what it was. It's just so blurry. It's an older film or recording, and it's tough. But I think, with the distance of yours and just the details that you were able to gather, I think it would be pretty amazing to have it on film. But I don't know. I was just wondering about that. How that would have maybe changed your perception of the whole, do I share? Do I not share? And I don't blame you for not sharing, especially in your line of work. It's like you said, it's worse than high school. And that's really, that can be really difficult.
Yeah, it's funny.
To share
I've seen things where like UFOs are kind of, I've seen like dash cam video of UFOs, that kind of, those kind of things. Yeah, I'm not exactly sure what you were talking about with the Greeny film. I don't know if I've ever seen anything like that you're talking about, but it, being as dark as it was, like I said, street lights, I would have to think that something would have shown up, whether it would have gotten the details that I could have seen. Whether it would have picked up on that, I don't know, but I would think that it would have picked up something. But yeah, that's interesting, because I don't know. Again, everybody wants the validation, like I'm not crazy, or if they see some kind of apparition or something, nobody wants to believe them. But when somebody else sees it, you're like, see, I told you. But I don't know. It also. The fact that no one has ever said anything to me, and I've been there, 23 years. I don't, for no one else to see anything or talk about anything, I would think that, just because I didn't say anything, that someone else may have, or at least questioned, like, other guys. And once you tell somebody, it's all over.
Right.
So, it's amazing that I've kept this to myself this long. But,
well, and they're probably just in your boat. If they've seen something, right? They're just kind of going, well, I'm just going to be the butt of the joke. I'm not going to say anything.
Right. Yes, exactly. Send me for a psych evaluation or something,
Right.
So,
well, right. Yeah. And honestly, we can joke about the being made fun of, like it's in high school all you want. But to be honest, they have to look at stuff like that, right? I mean, if you're saying I saw a werewolf on my patrol, your higher ups are going to go, are you doing okay? Everything okay at home? Like, are you sleeping? Are you, what are you taking? Sleeping, so I'm sure that it really could get serious at some point.
Yeah. Oh no. Yeah, exactly. I mean, everybody would look at you. That kind of moniker would stick to you for the rest of your career.
Right.
And you don't want that, so that's why I pretty much always kept it to myself and have never, even my sister that, we'll talk about later on in the other part, I've never even told her. And, she's helped me out with some other things. So, it was scary. It really was. It was, and again, just the evil part of it that I got from it, just the evil sense. I've never, well, I shouldn't say that, because I've had some other issues that we're going to talk about that I guess we're somewhat similar, but to see something is a whole nother level. Like people that you've talked to that have seen Bigfoot and everything. I don't know if I would ever want to see a Bigfoot, but I think I'd rather see a Bigfoot than that thing. Because like I said, it just came off as just pure evil, satanic. And I don't know what Bigfoot is or anything, but at least Bigfoot is kind of like, people could say whether it's a human or this or that, ape or whatever. At least you have some kind of understanding or some kind of thought. Everybody's got some kind of thought process of whether it exists, doesn't, or what it is, if it does. This thing just pure darkness, pure evil.
Well, and the feeling of foreboding seems to be a theme that runs along these bipedal dog-like creatures. And before we go to the other part of our talk for the Patreons, let's just finish up with this, because you keep touching on this feeling that you had and that your initial thought was that was Satan. And something that I wanted to just kind of say and get your thoughts on was when we're talking about these cryptids that will bleed into the paranormal realm. And what I mean by that is when we're talking about the difference between a dogman and a werewolf would be a dogman. We're assuming, we don't know, of course, I'm just saying. We're assuming a dogman is born a dogman, grows up a dogman, and dies a dogman. He's always a dogman, right? But when you're talking about a werewolf, a classic werewolf is a human being that changes into a werewolf, right? I mean, that's in the classic sense what that is. So then we're talking about a really paranormally minded really a creature, because it turns into a creature. We'll just call it that. So then you start talking about skinwalkers or someone that decides to execute really dark rituals, right? In essence, to be able to turn into this said creature. And whether that's for overnight or however long, I don't know. We don't know about that. But when you got that initial feeling, of this darkness and foreboding, and you're like, that was Satan. That to me really just, yes, we have our instincts that are built into us, but instead of you going, oh, that thing could rip the doors off my car and just, run off with me into the neighborhood, no one would hear anything. That seems to be a big difference between just automatically going, that was Satan. That is something just super dark. And you didn't say the word demonic, but that has come up before when I'm talking to people about these kind of creatures. They just feel like they're demonic somehow, right? And not to automatically put a label on it, but you really kind of did. And I appreciate that you were honest that was your initial reaction. So anyhow, that was a long-winded way of going, I kind of get where you're coming from, because when we're talking about a werewolf, like in Tina's case for the last episode, same thing, foreboding, dark, this is really bad. I got to get out of here. Obviously, besides the size, but the thing had on clothes, like a shirt. So that to us said, well, why in the hell would a living in the woods creature want to wear a shirt or have a need to wear a shirt? No, so our mind is going to, well, that was a person at some point, maybe an hour ago. I don't know. So anyway, I wanted to get your thoughts on that whole thing.
Yeah. Okay. So my thought process too is, if it was something that somebody changed into, and again, I could, if it had a shirt on, it was really hard for me to kind of make the distinction if it was wearing pants or any of that kind of stuff. You know, like, it was really hard to distinguish that. But so if someone turned into a werewolf, like the size of this, like I'm assuming like bone structure would have to change. You know what I mean? And that's why I always thought it was like some kind of like. So is Dogman supposed to be like you said they're born a Dogman, blah blah blah. So, but it's or even a werewolf, like it would have that kind of structure. And again, I don't know if this thing had a bone structure or not. I'm not exactly sure, you know. But it was like when you think like American Werewolf and you know, it was kind of movie stuff, you know what I mean? And I'm not saying that's the only
and that transformation kind of that he went through. That was one of the most incredible on-screen transformations crazy. For a werewolf. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, like the Fly. The Fly was always kind of freaky. But yeah, I mean, to get that size is so you would have to be like I don't know. I mean, obviously supernatural. If that happens to someone, God bless, you know. But I should say, like, you know, so maybe if it was something or somebody in that area and they were transforming this, I have to think that we would have gotten calls at some point for psychiatric stuff. You know, like maybe I'm being just completely crazy. It's the cop in me to go that way. Like we would have gotten calls for stuff over my 23 years to figure out like, hey, somebody in this area, hey, listen, you know, they're leaving the house at night or this or that or blah, 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 or somebody's claiming this. And, you know, we would, you know, somebody go into a psychiatric hospital or something. And I'm just talking in this area. So, or even like, you know, the area that I worked in, you know, never got that kind of stuff, but that's pretty, again, I describe it as a werewolf, but you know, the Dogman stuff, I don't know, but yes, it is, that was always my fear, was just evil and just, you know, I always made it as a satanic. And that's why I always wondered, like, dude, did somebody just take somebody's spirit, take somebody's, you know, soul or whatever, you know, I mean, I'm, you know, a Catholic person. So, but just really, really pretty crazy. So I don't know if it, I guess could have been a transformation thing. I don't know. I wish I had
and that's of course a stretch. I mean, to me, and I talk about all kinds of really cool and crazy things that I love. The idea of a human being turning into that is, even for me, I mean, that is really out there, right? And really, of course, so is a Dogman, but, you know, how far away is Bigfoot, really? And I really think that those guys are out there. So I have to be very careful about where I blur the line or draw the line. But, you know, to be fair to Dogman, a lot of people, I would say the majority, get that same feeling of foreboding and just something really not good, and you gotta book it, you gotta go now. And they mostly say, I don't ever want to see that again, right? Whereas some people, they'll have a Bigfoot, and you hear that with Bigfoot, but occasionally it lights, not occasionally, strike that, reverse it. A lot of times you have someone seeing a Bigfoot and then they're just obsessed with the subject and like setting up, you know, camps and they've got a group and they're doing the thing. I don't hear that about Dogman. Yes, there are people that look into it, but for the most part, people are like, y'all need to stay out in the woods. You guys are angry and pissy and we don't get a good feeling about you. So, right. Yeah. And you have confirmed.
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Go ahead.
So the people that you've spoken to about with the Dogman stuff, did they have the like reverse legs?
Yes,
so to speak, like the German Shepherd. Really? Okay.
Definitely. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah. So it could, you know, so that makes more sense then. So it could have been that, and then, but it just seemed like. Do they say it looks like a werewolf at the same time? Or
yeah.
Do they distinguish? No, this is Dogman and werewolf, two separate
No, because it's really tough, I think, to distinguish between the two, really. And that's why last week's episode stood out so much, is because it did have an article of clothing on. Because then I that's why she labeled it a werewolf, because it had this shirt on,
Gotcha.
which was just so very
Okay.
strange, right? And it's not strange enough that there's this basically a dog man, but then the damn thing had a shirt on. So she's like, that is a werewolf. And that's why we labeled it the way that we did, because you're kind of going, well, technically, if a dog man puts a shirt on, I guess it's then a werewolf, because then your mind goes to, well, it must have been a person, because why, like I said earlier, why would a creature put a shirt on? But maybe he's just fashion forward. I don't know.
Right.
But
it's not the 60s. There's no clotheslines of clothes out there where you walk by and steal a shirt. So
exactly. He's like, well, I mean, I want to switch it up. I mean, I got this hair covering me all the time. I'm getting tired of it. But the other thing is, and this also goes usually across the line for Dogman. They don't give a crap. They really don't. They don't give a crap if you see them. That is really honestly what I hear most. And you were right there in a car, headlights pointed right at it, and it didn't even look over at you because it didn't seem to give a crap. I mean,
Yeah, right. Yeah. I tell you, it's awesome because, I always wondered what that was. So now that we're kind of, hammering things down, it's good for me mentally to say what it was. I mean, I could say werewolf, but yes, I mean, it seems more like Dogman stuff. And, I don't know all that much about Dogman. I've only heard of Dogman through your podcast, to be honest with you. So, I mean, I like the Bigfoot stuff, but I've kind of learned a lot of stuff through your podcast on what things were. And, I've heard of like Dogman and everything like that, but to be able to pin it down, so to speak, is kind of just good for me, just so I can, from going forward, I can just say, okay, yeah, it was probably Dogman or whatever, whatever people want to call it or whatever, but that's the predominant name that I've heard. So yeah, so it's just good for me, good for my psyche, I guess you could say, to narrow that down. So I appreciate it.
Well, and I mean, for you to come forward means everything, because without you guys sharing all this stuff, I mean, I glean new data points for all this stuff every single time I get on, whether it's for haunting stuff or mostly the cryptid stuff, because of the fact that these are usually, we're assuming flesh and blood things that run around, and people can actually see them and see their muscles moving, and how big are the hands, and all these little details can come out. Whereas ghosty stuff is a little bit different. But, this is, I don't know if you've come across this episode, but D. Doss is his name. And D had seen a dog man, and actually I have just taken a point that I made earlier and just threw it right out the window. D had seen a dog man, and I don't remember that first sighting. Maybe it wasn't that close, and that's why he did. I apologize if I'm misspeaking, but I know he saw one, and then he decided he wanted to see it again. So see, I just lied to myself and all my listeners a little bit ago. He goes out to this location, and he's sitting in his truck, and he's got the windows down, and something comes up behind him, and he can, I believe he can hear it or see it in the side mirror or something. He can see that it is in fact a quote unquote dog man. And the most horrifying thing is that he says that as it's crouched down, and as it unfolds itself and stands up, he can hear this loud popping and cracking coming from its joints and things, right? So I don't know.
Yeah.
The details like that really get to me.
Episode. I remember. Yeah, I remember the cracking.
Yeah,
I remember that part of it. I didn't remember the whole thing that he wanted to see. Lord knows why he would want to see that thing
right.
again. I can tell you right now, like I said, obviously I don't want to, because I refuse to go back in the street. I don't know. You don't want that kind of evil in if it sticks to you, like that's what I'm always afraid of, and that's kind of the stuff that we're talking about later. But yeah, you don't. I don't ever want to see that again. So God bless him.
No, I don't blame you either.
That's terrifying.
Yeah,
I don't know what. How's he sleep at night?
I was just gonna say.
White?
I mean, if if you hear something like that and you know what's making that noise on top of that, I just think that sound would just never leave you. Even if you were in your house, I think I would just start awake thinking I hear joints popping and cracking from this creature from hell, you know?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Well,
and that's the thing. So I don't know I don't know if it had came at me. Now, it's not like I could see through it, but I don't know if it was. So is Dogman like does it have a bone structure, so to speak? Like if you were to shoot it, like would it go down?
Right.
That's not the impression I got from this thing. The impression I got from this thing is if I shot it, it wouldn't. I don't know if the bullet would go through it, but it just. Man, that's kind of weird now to think about it. I don't know. I don't know what the deal is with that. So even if he hears this thing, crackling behind him and standing up, like, can you outrun it? Can you shoot it? Is it going to do anything? Or, I don't know. So that's not the impression I got from the thing I saw. Like if I shot it again, dark enough that I couldn't see through it. I couldn't see past it. Like it was obviously some kind of, call it entity or something that went across the street. It definitely had a form to it. I could see, some things. Obviously, I could make out the legs, blah blah blah. But I don't know if those things are able to be like shot and killed.
Well, and when I talk to, you probably run across this one, but the peace officer and the Cryptids of Flint River episode, especially the first one when he really went in depth about he and his friends encounter with basically a dogman, and they fired at it, and he said, I know that we hit that thing, and it let out some kind of horrible scream or sound, but he's like, it didn't seem to do anything. It didn't go down, it got away. So it's a really good question, and one that, I mean, I guess unless somebody actually finally takes a shot and takes one down, we won't know. But people say that about Bigfoot. They say, I was out here with a hunting rifle, and unless I had like the perfect shot, it would have just pissed it off,
Yeah, right. Yeah, and to make that, I can guarantee you, I mean, if I still had that, that feeling of pure evil, to hear a scream like that after you saw it, shot at it, and did nothing, and just heard a scream, I can guarantee he's hearing that scream every day, because I mean, I think about this thing a lot, and to go through that kind of experience. Ooh, I mean, I just saw across the street. I don't want to have anything like that. So God bless him.
Well, and that's kind of in essence, the bummer of a story like yours, or a story like for that gentleman, the peace officer and the Cryptids of Flint River, is you guys are essentially patrolling in your area, right? You're not on vacation and saw this thing and then can fly home. This is your area where you live. So that's kind of the bummer of it, right?
Yeah. So out of the four squads, or the two beats that are working that day, I mean, that street's not getting what it paid for when I'm working that night. So if I'm in that beat, so,
yeah.
So yeah,
I don't blame you.
It's
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Well,
pretty crazy.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on. I don't take it lightly that you chose me to tell your story to. And I just hope that more people come forward with stories like this. And I mean, I've really got an interesting theme here going lately with these Dogman and werewolf stories. I know everyone loves my pronunciation of werewolf, so there you go. I own it. I'm okay with it.
I hear you. I appreciate you, because I wouldn't have come on or even emailed you if the trust wasn't there, because like I said, 20 years ago, and if I didn't trust you and hear and listen to your other podcasts, and I'm sure there's other podcasts out there, to listen to yours and to hear the people that have come out and sort of like me, never told anything to anybody, kind of goes to you and to your character, so to speak, that that we trust you, and I appreciate it, because I've learned a lot I can at least tell myself, you saw, am I a Dogman now, as opposed to a werewolf. I look forward to listening to those other podcasts when I catch up, to see the similarities, and maybe I have other questions or something like that. But I really appreciate the forum to come on and actually talk about it. So thank you very much. And I will say I do love the ending music to to your podcast. So to end it on a lighter note.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
It's really cool.
I just like the message within. They got good. I mean, the great Alan Watts speaking in there. Electus put that in there, and I'm really grateful to have the intro and the outro that I do. And I just can't imagine any other music in there, and I don't plan to, unless one of them goes, "Hey, you're not using this anymore unless I have $1 billion." Something like that might change
right.
the intro or the outro.
Yeah.
But I can't imagine it any other way. So, well, thank you so much for coming on, and let's
Thank you.
Let's switch gears and have a little chat about some other wonderful oddities for my Patreon, shall we?
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. And then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. Master Dogman put it in this way. He said, spring does not become summer. First there is summer, and then there is spring. when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, get up and walk across the room. And he comes back and he says, where are your footprints? They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.